If you like this video, why not subscribe?
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Recap Q&A show. That's the show where I sit in my car. It's kind of like a podcast, and I'm sitting here in my car because I don't have studio space, which I desperately want, but I don't have it yet. So I have a portable studio. And the acoustics in here sound pretty good for the on-camera mic, so that's why I'm doing it, for those of you who don't know. And we're going to talk about some questions that I received on YouTube and also through email. And if you have a question you would like me to answer or attempt to answer on this show, please email me at thefrugalfilmmaker@gmail.com. That's the best chance you have of me answering a question on this show. And I will also try and answer you through email. Sometimes I get lazy or run out of time or whatever and don't do it through email and only on the show. And I apologize. I'm trying to do more communication through email with all of my non-time. So at any rate, let's go ahead and jump right into the questions here. The first one comes from Larna Justin, who asks, "Hey Scott, do you know if the Kickstarter funds you raised are taxable?" And for those of you who don't know, as I just ran a successful Kickstarter campaign to fund my thesis film, Collection Day, which I'm sure you're all sick of hearing about, but it was a successful Kickstarter campaign. And that is a question that I had, actually, because I raised over $10,000. I'll probably end up with about 10% of that after all the fees are taken out. But, so I'll have around $10,000. Is that taxable? Well, of course it is, because the IRS is going to want a piece of anything. So what do you do about this? Well, from all the research that I did, which I guess wasn't a whole lot, I just Googled it and read a bunch of stuff, was that yes, number one, it is taxable, and the best way around that is to, set up a business account, which isn't that cheap, or isn't that expensive, and just make sure that you spend every dime of it, and that you keep track of everything with record keeping. Just keep all your receipts so that if you're audited, you can prove that what you spent was on the movie. And so there you go. If you try and spend that money on yourself, or you don't spend it on the film or whatever, which you should be spending it on the film. I mean, I understand this is Kickstarter money. These are people contributing to me to help me to make my film. I'm not getting paid. I'm not taking a salary or anything out of the Kickstarter money. Everything in the Kickstarter fund is going toward the movie, but I need to make sure that I spend all of it on the movie, because anything that's not spent on the movie is taxable. So there you go. Make sure that, I also wanted to make sure, I think it's a good idea not to intermingle the Kickstarter money with your own money, because when the money is finally available on Amazon, it asks you, which account, you set up accounts with Amazon, and which account, you tell them which account you want them to send it to, and set up a business account, or set up an account that's separate, so that you don't mix your money in with the Kickstarter money, because you don't want to be accidentally spending the Kickstarter money, or for example run out of your own money and say, oh, I've got this other money to bail us out, because it's not the purpose of it, and you don't want to ever be tempted by that. So to avoid the IRS, again, spend all the money on your film and keep track of everything, keep all the receipts. I could be wrong about this, but if anybody knows anything else about this, please comment below, because it is an important topic for anybody attempting to raise money or raising money on Kickstarter. I guess if you're successful at raising money, the IRS always knows about the money coming toward you, and even though you might try and avoid them, they'll find out eventually. That's called tax evasion. You don't want to get caught doing that. All right, Ethan Vrooman asks, just curious, but what camera/video camera are you going to use when you shoot Collection Day? And this is mentioned on my Kickstarter page, but your first thought might be, well, Scott's already got a camera. He's got a Sony NEX5N that he likes. He's got those Minolta lenses. He should do that. That's the most frugal thing. And while that's true, since this is my thesis film, however, I would definitely want to up the ante as much as possible by making the film look as good as possible. And that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the kind of camera you use, but it can make a difference if you know how to use it. I'm not falling back on the excuse, well, I just need to have a red and then it'll look awesome. Well, that's not necessarily the case, because if you don't know what you're doing, your movie can still look terrible. But after talking with my director of photography, Jared Beck, who's helped me, and I've worked with him on several student projects before, he recommended that I use the Sony FS700. It's also an NEX camera, which is kind of a high-end NEX camera, so that we can have more dynamic range, we can have more flexibility in post as far as color grading goes. And because I have a budget, I can actually afford to get one. Now, originally my plan is, well, I have two plans actually. The plan A is that I wait for the school to get the nicest camera possible. They're supposed to be getting a Red Scarlet. However, they've told me that it might not be here in time for my shoot, so I have to have a contingency plan, and the contingency plan is to rent a Sony FS700. That's not what I would rather do. I'd rather spend the $1,200 in rental fees on something else in my movie, but I can budget an amount because I have it for the Sony. If the Scarlet shows up, I'll definitely use it. Either case, I'm going to be shooting with the Minolta lenses anyway, because I'm going for kind of a 70s look, a warmer look, kind of a creamier, dreamier, if you will, look from those older lenses that were made in the 70s and early 80s. That's what the Minolta lenses I have are. So that I'll definitely be using those no matter what camera I shoot on. Now, if the bottom were to drop out, or let's say that I wasn't able to raise my Kickstarter money, I was going to use my Sony NEX5N. But because I have access to a better camera, I'm going to take advantage of it and use it. Again, it's my thesis film. This isn't a typical Frugal Filmmaker project because the school mandates certain things. And although the camera you use isn't mandated, I want it to look as good as possible. So that's one reason I'm looking into the Sony or the Scarlet if it shows up, or even my camera. But my camera is sort of a last resort. All right, Pat Hunt writes and says, what would you do if you were in the middle of shooting and for whatever reason an actor was unable to continue? I'm sure extras would be relatively easy to replace or cut from scenes, but if it's a main character, would you have to start over and shoot everything again? Wow, talk about a horrible scenario. You know, I've never had this situation. I've had people change their minds before shooting started, but I've never had an actor during shooting say, hey, I'm out of here, for whatever reason. I mean, maybe it's a legitimate reason. Maybe they get sick and they can't continue, in which case I would almost think you'd want to postpone shooting if you could and pick it up when they're healthy. But if someone, let's just say someone up and left in the middle of shooting, what would I do? You know, if it was a main character and they were just unavailable, I don't think you'd have any other choice but to reshoot. The other option would be to find out, you know, why, if they're leaving for under mysterious circumstances, I would say, you know, pursue them. Definitely find out what's going on. A problem I've had before is that sometimes there's a communication breakdown because of all the kind of electronic communication. You don't have face-to-faces with people, and there's a communication breakdown. Call them on the phone, meet them face-to-face, see what's going on, see if you can rectify the situation because maybe there's some misunderstanding that you're not aware of. You know, be diplomatic, find out, help to resolve their problems. I mean, they've originally committed to you as an actor, and you've committed to them as a director. So there should be some kind of interplay going on. That's a relationship, and you need to foster it, especially, you know, since they're in your movie, and it's critical for you to finish your movie is for them to be in it if they're a main part. Like, again, if there's a problem that you don't know about, find out what the problem is. Ask them if there's a problem. See what you can do to resolve the problem. If it was something you were unaware of, you can probably fix it. You should be able to fix it if you're the director or the producer or whatever. So that's what I would recommend. And that also stretches into our question this week is, you know, what would you do if one of your main actors bailed? I told you my answer, but how would you handle it? Would you just start shooting over? Would you just cut them? Would you go break their neck? Whatever. You know, let me know in the comments below. I realize another thing might be, you know, not all of us are on deadlines. I'm on a strict deadline for collection day, so if something that major happened, I would be in a lot of trouble to try and fix it. But not all of us are under those kind of deadlines. So what would you do if your actor quit? That is the question of the week. Again, if you want to find out about any other Frugal Filmmaker stuff, you can go to the hub of all my material, which is my blog, thefrugalfilmmaker.com. There's also this YouTube channel, of course. There's a Twitter feed at Frugal Filmmaker. There's a huge Facebook group, which has turned into a big forum on Facebook. I'll leave all those links below, as usual. And again, if you want to send a letter or ask me a question, thefrugalfilmmaker@gmail.com. Have a great week.